d'Oracle. Mesdames et messieurs, please join me to welcome our Chief Executive Officer, Mark Hurd.
Okay, wow, hi. Je suis très content to be here with you. Thank you. I knew that sounded very fluent, but I'm really American. So what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about digital disruption, things we see going on in the marketplace. I'll try to make eye contact up there best I can. And then when I'm done, I've only got a handful of charts. How many charts do I have? 5, 6? 5, 6. And then we'll try and do Q&A for as long as we can. And if you have no questions, I'll get done real quick. If you do, I'll stay here as long as the handlers will let me. Okay, let's go to the first chart. Let me tell you a little bit about starting what, Laurent started by talking about being a CEO. Let me tell you what CEOs think about. First, surviving. The world is very competitive. If anybody tells you any different, they're kidding you. First thing is they got to survive. How do they survive? They have to be able to get into new markets, and they have to be able to grow revenue. And then they have to be able to deliver increased earnings as a result of growing revenue. CEOs focus on only a few things, or let me put it a better way. They should only focus on a few things. One is, do they have a strategy? Do they have an operating model that allows the business to go execute the strategy? And do they have the best people to go execute the operating model? These are the big things that chief executive officers think about. And in the context of that, they have to have strategies to get into new markets, to get to new customers, and grow their business. And if they can't, the survival rate of the CEO is very low. And when you've been doing this stuff for a long time, like I have, every quarter's a new battle. And as much as every CEO would like to tell you they're thinking about the world 10 years from now, they've got to do two things at the same time. Think about this minute and today at the same time as they think about tomorrow. So when you wonder what's in their CEO's head, the CEO's thinking about strategy, operations, people. Thinking about today and tomorrow all at the same time. And how do I get to new markets? How do I grow my revenue? And do it at a reasonable cost level. A lot of things to be thinking about all at the same time. But that every time you're in a meeting with a CEO, some portion of all of those thoughts are in that leader's head. Next chart. Let me make the problem worse. So if it wasn't enough to have to think about all that stuff, around all of us right now are these huge secular changes going on in the industry. Some of them are IT. By the way, pop quiz. I've got some very smart Oracle people here who I know can answer questions. Does everybody know what is worldwide gross domestic product, worldwide GDP? How many people know the size of worldwide GDP? Oh, here, Deborah, do you know the size of worldwide GDP? Okay. Loic? 17. She's cheated. So, $71 trillion is the size of worldwide GDP. Big number. Anybody know the size of IT? Anybody? Does anybody think it's like huge? 10 trillion? 5 trillion? Who thinks it's 5 trillion? More or less? Less. 4 trillion? 3 trillion? It's 2 trillion. Philippe, if I'd have seen you there, I'd ask these questions of you. $2 trillion. So 3% of worldwide GDP. But the big thing is you can't do most of the rest of the 71 without the 2. The 2's interwoven fundamentally into worldwide commerce. And worldwide commerce today doesn't really get done without what's in the IT industry. Now, around us are all of these huge secular changes. I'll start with sophisticated customers. Does everybody know? I'll give you a US stat, because I'm sure you all are fascinated with United States statistics. Do you know how many Americans are going to retire in the next 8 years? 43% of Americans can retire in the next 8 years. By the way, I'm one of them. And there are many people at Oracle hoping that happens faster. No, I'm kidding. Well, I don't know if I'm kidding or not. But so 43% can retire in the next 8 years. That's not really that interesting a stat in the context of worldwide economy. But it does say that those workers, if employment is flat, this is not the most comfortable chair. But if employment is flat, those 43% get replaced by a new 43%. Okay? So let's take it this way. I'm leaving, and my daughter's coming in. You may say, that's really not that big a deal. It's a big deal. First, I want my daughter to be employed. No, I'm kidding. But what really happens is I, as an old customer, leave. And I have very low expectations of my suppliers. I grew up getting bad service from everybody. Not my daughter. My daughter expects to get an answer to any question she has like that. She expects to get it mobily through whatever device and whatever technology she wants to get it. Whereas I am thrilled to get anything. I'm easy to please, I think. What do you think, Louis? No? Okay. I'm talking more as a customer here. I thought it was a great innovation that I could actually find out how to pick up somebody at the airport. Do you ever remember when those call centers, you could call into a call center and find out what gate somebody was arriving? To me, that was a huge innovation. Tell that to my kids today, not so much. The problem being the unsophisticated customers are retiring, replaced by a suite of sophisticated customers. Harder to deal with, harder to please, less loyal. Same thing's going to be true with employees. Employees now coming to the workplace expect a certain amount of collaboration, tools, and communication that, frankly, I didn't expect. So let's go back to the CEO again. The world's now getting more complicated. Hard enough to do the stuff I described earlier, but now the world's changing. You've had these other inventions at the same time, this thing called social. This is really interesting stuff. So now it used to be when you try to hire somebody, right? Let's pretend I'm trying to hire Deborah here in the front row. When I would try to hire you, most of the way Deborah would find out about Oracle is she'd find out about it from me. I would try to hire her. I would tell her about the company. She might have a friend. Maybe she knows somebody. But almost all of that relationship was controlled by me and by our firm. Now, she goes to the web and finds out everything and probably dismisses what she heard from the company. You try to go buy something. You used to hear most about the product from who? The person or the company selling to you. Now, where do you find out about it? On the web. And the world has now become this word that's either good or bad, but it's become transparent. The transparency is now out there about your company, your product, your people. The only good news is it's just as transparent for your competitor as it is for you. So social starts to change the very dynamic of how you communicate, how you sell, how you reference, how you hire. So this is a huge secular change. You've now got everybody running around, and I don't know what I do. Oh, here we go. I think I've got it with me. Yeah, give me one of those. Look at this thing. So this is a big thing. So now you have over 2 billion of these running around the planet. Smart computers. By the way, really interesting news. When I started in the computer industry, which is, 100 years ago, the biggest mainframe computer, an IBM 360, this is more powerful than an IBM 360. You got now 2 billion of these running them through people's hands all across the planet. Globally, everybody with a computer, now with incredible amounts of data. And, we talk about the fact that the data set, whatever you think of it today, will grow by almost 50x by the time you hit to 2020. I'm not going to talk about the scale of data today. I think you all know it. You all feel it every day. But trust me on this. The data set size is growing to proportions that nobody ever imagined. Huge data set size. A lot of smart people, very sophisticated, demanding, not very loyal customers and employees about to enter the workforce, all with incredible powers at their fingertips, all moving around the planet mobily at the same time. These are big, big problems. Now, the problem is the companies, and let me just try to give you some other stats. I don't think I put these in the presentation. But if you looked at IT, remember I told you about that $2 trillion? Okay, well, if you went back like 10 years ago, it was about $1.3 trillion or 4. And you say IT's grown a lot. Most of the IT growth is with the consumer, not with companies. IT is now, this is a stat that, if I'd have told you this 15 years ago, or somebody told me, I'd tell you I don't believe it. IT consumer spending is now roughly equivalent to company spending. Okay, so big stat to understand. Now let me explain to you why they're really not the same. Companies spend 82%, 83% of their budget keeping the existing legacy systems running. So the percent they spend on innovation is very low. If you thought of this as a business, think of it's $1 trillion of enterprise spend, company spend. They spend about 170, 180 billion innovating on a consumer that's going crazy with technology. And the company can't keep up. So what's happening is the consumer is now running around, in many cases, more sophisticated than the company who's trying to hire them or sell to them. This is what we would call a problem. The consumer has an expectations of tools, capabilities, that in many cases a company can't deliver. Now, on the last part of this chart, you see this thing called applications and the age of applications. This is a Fortune 500 US statistic. Average application is 20 years old. Now, this should be a statistic most people know. What is 2014 minus 20? Anybody have an answer? What year would that be? Okay, wait, so hold on. Let me go back through this. Now, I'm from California. Right now in California, it's 1:20 in the morning. Here in France, it's what time? 10:50, too early? Yeah, I see, okay. I can tell by the crowd. So you guys need to be with me here. You got to keep me fired up, keep me energized. Okay, 2014 minus 20. What year? 94, okay. Now, I'm guessing, I think before 1994, in 1994, was there an internet? Just started, really, right? Was there search? I don't think there was search. Was there social? I don't think there was social. Was there a mobile phone? No. So imagine all these apps are built before any of this stuff was even around. So I built a bunch of apps. This stuff wasn't available and probably in many cases wasn't even dreamed of. Let's go to next chart. So this is a problem. Yeah, I think I said this. Pre-internet, pre-search, pre-mobile, pre-cloud. Nobody heard of a cloud. If it was about the weather. 75% of the apps are fundamentally customized to the point that the originator of the app doesn't even recognize it. Or in some cases, they're homegrown. Most of the money is spent keeping these apps running. And the consumer has innovated and sort of moved past what's the fundamental backbone infrastructure of most of the companies out there trying to serve them and trying to employ them today. So as a business problem, this is hard. Hard. Let me make it harder. If this isn't hard already, I'll make it harder. IT budgets globally, up 1%, up 2%. By the way, if you add up the companies in the IT industry, it may not even be up 2% when you just add their revenue. So at the end of the day, the CEO who we talked about earlier isn't showing up with saying, you know, there's a lot of changes here in the IT industry. Just spend whatever you need. Limitless. Don't have a lot of money. Huge digital disruption going on in the industry. I've got really old app infrastructure. And we need to innovate faster than our competitor. That's the backdrop of the problem we got today. All right, let's go to the next chart. Well, let me hit this for a second. Let me hit this for a second, because I think I'm going to skip that chart. Let's go back. Can we go back one? Yeah, this is really where the world heads. The fact that instead of customized applications, I can get the standard applications. That I can get these applications that are easily and quickly provisioned. I can get them mobilely ready. I can get them integrated with social. Get real-time analytics integrated directly into the application set. And this has to happen sort of in the next, if you believe the secular changes that I've described to you, and you believe the change in the basic consumer backdrop that I just described, you have a very limited time set to go make all this work. Let's go to the next chart. I think I'm not going to really talk about this chart much. I'm going to talk about the innovation side of the chart, because I've sort of highlighted retailers here and talent management. And I think what I'm going to do is hit on a story about what goes on in industries, because a lot of the innovation, how many people, is anybody here in the retail industry? No. One? Two? Not many. Okay, retail is an interesting industry. Very low margins, don't make a lot of money, hard to differentiate from each other. You can have a little bit different merchandise layout, but it's really hard to differentiate. The real differentiation is service. And it's been the industry that, one of the reasons we love retail at Oracle is because you learn a lot of lessons fast, because it's such a hyper-competitive industry. And many of the lessons learned in retail move across other industry segments. They are perhaps the most aggressive today in talking to their customers. In the US, if you get to Nordstrom's, Neiman Marcus, Saks, Bloomingdale's, I don't know if any of these brands mean anything to you. These are some of the most high-end brands that compete with each other, and they compete for market share, particularly among families, particularly among women who have families in the areas of fashion and merchandise. And they are hyper-competitive. They today know more about Americans, know more about their families, and personalizing offers and solutions to you than any other industry. I've told this story before, I'll tell you. I mean, my wife has a personal website. This is bad for me. She's got a personal shopper. This is bad for me. She can talk to the shopper while she's online on the personal website. Of those retailers, she can communicate from any device she has to that personal website, and it tells the personal shopper she's on the website, and they can chat while she's on the website. They will buy for her not just intra-catalog, but also inter-catalog, and go to somebody else's catalog to gain share of wallet. All done, by the way, I wouldn't tell you this story if it wasn't all done on Oracle technology. But when that specific retailer got to market first, what happened in the rest of the industry? Everybody copied. And now the difference between Nordstrom's and Neiman Marcus and Saks and Bloomingdale's from a technology perspective is very small. Go take the phone industry. Let me have that phone again. I don't know, this is one of my favorite industries. So I don't have my phone with me, but if I did, my provider knows exactly where I am. They know I'm here. They know I'm in France. They know when I'm on the phone. They know when I'm on a conference call. They know how strong my signal is or how weak my signal is. They know how long I've been on the phone. They know my data plan. They know my voice plan. They know my voice usage. They know my data usage. And guess what they do for me as a result of knowing all that? Absolutely nothing. They help me absolutely zero. The only thing they do for me very well and very consistently is send me a bill. Right? I mean, does anybody have a different experience? I don't. My bank, another good one. Now, let me give you my bank, frequently I have money that goes through my account, and every now and then they call me up. And they ask me if I'm a drug dealer. They say, you've had a lot of money go through your account and it went in and out, and how'd you get that money? And I'm like, listen, it's none of your business, right? I've been banking here 30 years, though, and it sort of shows up the same way every month. But they don't care. Or at least they don't care enough to change the process and how they deal with me. Now, I'm telling you that by industry segment, someone is going to change what I just said. There will be a service provider who will change the way they communicate with me. They will, on that device, say, hi, Mark, I see you're in France. It looks like you're on a lot of conference calls. Would you like more bandwidth? Would you like a stronger signal? Would you like? And I might very well say, yeah. Yeah. And whoever can do that for me, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to switch to them. Because my loyalty to my service provider is zero. Because they don't help me. If I didn't mention this before, they don't help me worth a damn. Same thing through my bank. And by the way, I'm one of those guys that's leaving the workforce in the next few years. Imagine what it's like for the next generation. They are materially less loyal than me. So I'm here to tell you that not only are you going to see dramatic changes because of the technology, the people like me who are already frustrated are getting replaced by a group of workers that are going to be less loyal. By the way, not only are they less loyal, I told you earlier on a chart, they're more willing to communicate that frustration. Social tools to which, I don't often get on the web. Like I, for example, don't tweet how frustrated I am with my service provider. I've told you in this speech, but I never get on and tweet and say mean things. I don't go on Yelp. I don't go on any of these things. If you get to millennials, there are roughly about a third of the millennials who will. It's a very interesting dynamic that's occurred now. The willingness to complain publicly. In my generation, I complained to you. And what was interesting was, when I complained, I would call up somebody at the company. I'd complain. I could get emotional. And they send me a coupon. Say nice things to me, and, I go away. And I really had nobody else I could tell. I could tell my wife. Maybe I could tell my sister, my brother. I could tell some people. But my ability to communicate my frustration was somewhat limited by the tools I had available to communicate. Now if you have a bad experience, if my kid has a bad experience, you've now, as a supplier, I've lost control of that process. Because that person can now tweet it, put it on Facebook, and God help you if they don't make a YouTube video of you and put it on YouTube. And now that entire experience is out in the public domain. And your ability to control it has now changed dramatically. So I only tell you this, that some of this isn't just going to be innovating to gain share. Some of it's going to be need to innovate to be able to control customer delight and customer satisfaction. I mean, I don't know how many of you I went to business school in the United States. I'm sure that shocks you. And when I went to business school in the United States, I had a professor who tried to convince me that, and did a pretty good job, that 95% customer satisfaction was perfect. And I've delivered this stat before, and I remember the class very well, that once you got past 95, you were spending a lot of money to make customers happy that was worthless. It would not improve your customer loyalty, it would not improve your market share, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you had, in our case at Oracle, we have 400-something thousand customers, about 410, 415,000 customers. Using that logic, there are 20,000 unhappy customers. If it was a consumer business and they're now on Twitter, Facebook, communicating, that thesis that I learned in 1981 is now wrong. Is now wrong. Because I don't control the relationship anymore. The relationship is controlled by the consumer, the employee, because of the tool sets that they've got. And this has all been interrupted by the digitization of the economy that we've gone through over the past several years. Next chart. I think this is a self-explanatory chart. Next chart. Next chart. Let me tell you what we're doing. Let me tell you what we're doing. We've sort of moved everything to the cloud. Doesn't mean that there won't be a legacy business for years to come. But we've moved all of our capabilities to the cloud, and the cloud for us has 3 different levels that we deliver. One is called platform. Platform as a service to us means the Oracle database, Java. And it's going to be, I think, the way you're going to see applications developed in the future is using Java database, but out of the cloud. So what you think of as development and testing today is roughly 30% of IT. And I predict for you, you will see a radical shift to this thing called PaaS on a market-leading stack. And that's the signification of the database and Java in that stack. And Oracle will be the leading PaaS platform in the world. Secondly, we expect to be highly differentiated in what you would call applications as a service, or SaaS. To have best-of-breed applications, and to be the only one with a full suite of applications. So you have both the best application for marketing, the best application for sales, for human capital management, but at the same time, the fact that they can work together as a suite of products makes them differentiated. And the fact that the two can work together, platform and applications, makes us really the only company that has both a suite of applications and a platform capability at the same time. Now, this is very different technology and a very different world than what we grew up in. Let me explain why. It used to be in applications. Remember the stat I gave you about most of the applications are non-standard. They've been customized, they've been adapted, they're homegrown. And so therefore, the ability for them to stay up with current trends is either non-existent or very limited. SaaS applications have a couple different characteristics. One, the application is really controlled, in this case, by Oracle. Controlled in this sense, we upgrade it, and we do it for you automatically. 3 times a year, you'll see a new release of code. There could be as many as 500 features per release. You could get 1,500 features in a year. Over 5 years, imagine you get 7,000 features. And you've done how much work for that? None. By the way, you don't have to take them. You can take all 7,000, or you can take 0. You can pick which features you take and which ones you don't. At the same time, with Platform as a Service, you can actually build incremental apps that don't change the core application. So now you've shifted the work from IT in a company to Oracle, to Oracle's R&D. And you get rapid innovation, rapid state-of-the-art feature sets that you could never have had even 5 years ago. All socially enabled, all mobilely enabled, as you do it. This is a huge change in the industry. Because all of the work historically was you'd go to your application provider. If you didn't homegrown develop the application, you'd get a disk, and then it was your problem. You'd hire a systems integrator, you'd hire your IT staff, you'd usually adapt the application. Then anytime you want to change it or upgrade it, who did all the work? You did. And the ability for an IT staff to keep up with an R&D staff, not possible. So this is a huge change we're going through in the industry. This isn't a change about cost. So when I hear about the cloud, I hear a lot of people say, I love the cloud. Why do you love the cloud? Because it's simple. And it's OpEx. Those are both true statements. But it's also about innovation. The speed by which you're going to get new capabilities and new features will be unparalleled to anything we've seen in our industry so far. Oracle, differentiated at PaaS, platform, differentiated at SaaS, the application layer. Our infrastructure as a service, we believe, will be popular with the customers that buy PaaS from us and buy SaaS from us. And we'll price it the same as the commodity infrastructure providers in the industry. Highly differentiated in SaaS, highly differentiated in PaaS, infrastructure as a service priced with commodity providers that you can leverage as you so choose. Okay, let's go to the next chart. I think I've said this, complete suite of modern integrated applications that are both best of breed. I've told you about the platform. I've told you about the complete compute and storage to make agile and responsive. I've told you about analytics, and this is a big difference. It used to be historically that to get analytics out of applications, you had to take the data out of the application, put it somewhere else, and people would ask questions about it. Now, as you go to these new generation of applications, the analytics are integrated into the application. So if, again, I had my technology with me today and we wanted to talk, in fact, I do. Gosh, I didn't need to borrow your phone. Mine's actually smaller than yours, and I've got it in my pocket. If I wanted to, I could tell you about Oracle's 136,000 people through this device. I can actually run a query. The only limitation I have with this device is my ability to type, which is more of a personal problem. But I don't like this. By the way, it's going to be the biggest innovation you're going to see in the next 5 years is user interfaces. This stuff is going to be, this stuff we use today is going to be archaic. But the fact that I can tell you right this second the cost of our workforce. And by the way, then if you said to me, well, Mark, what if you added 1,000 salespeople? What if your attrition rate was X? What if you gave everybody a 3 or 4% raise while you did it? What if you met your quotas at this level of quota and the commissions were Y? What would happen to your costs? I can run that query for you in probably 2.5, 3 minutes, and I'd have an answer. It would have taken data from our financial systems, integrated with our HR systems, and given me an answer right back on my phone. I could never have done this even 3 years ago. I would have had to call somebody up. I would have had to have sent an email to say, hey, here's my question. And probably 6, 7 hours later, somebody'd send me a return email. By the way, gosh help me if I thought of a new idea in between when I asked and got the answer. Now these analytics are integrated into a whole new world. By the way, I could have done the same query about a customer. I could do it about really anything. As long as the data's there, the analytics are integrated into the app. All right, next chart. All right, why don't we go to whatever questions you might have? I'm glad to answer any questions about anything as long as it has roughly something to do with the IT industry or Oracle. I don't really want to talk about any US politics. I have a choice. And I don't know that we need a microphone. Do we in this room? I don't think so. I think I could hear. We have a microphone, but I think I can hear anybody. Any questions? It's always a tough thing to ask for the first question. Now, it's possible that maybe this was so clear, you know, it was so compelling, and it was so thought-provoking that it has you stunned, and you just, you know, I just...
Can I start with a question?
Sure.
What about the security that we think about the cloud and the things that we hear about the difficulties in the future about the cloud and the security and the way people could enter in our cloud, or something like, you know, in France, we think that Big Brother is going to look at our data in the US data centers.
Big Brother? Is that the US?
Yeah. That's the kind of things we think.
Okay. I see. All right, I think I understand the question. A couple things. One, our cloud, the data is completely encrypted. So our people who operate our data centers and our systems won't even see your data. Okay? It's all key encrypted, and the key sits with you. You have the key. So let's use, I don't really love Laurent's question. Let me reword the question because I think I know what he was trying to say. Let's pretend somebody called me up and said, hey, Mark, we're from some agency and we want this French customer's data. Is that really the question? Yeah, I got it. I didn't really understand when you got brothers and sisters in there, and I got confused. But I think that's the question. I would say, okay, I'm not doing that. And they say, well, okay, thank you for your opinion, but we've gone and gotten a subpoena. And we now have the legal right, and it's because it's in a US data center, that we have the right to this for whatever reason. And we were compelled to do it by law. We would hand over an encrypted file. And so now they can try to de-encrypt it. Not going to happen. But that's what they get, because we don't have the unencrypted data. Now, it would get harder if we'd have housed that data in a non-US data center, because they'd have to go through an extra hoop of legalese, if you will, to be able to get at data in another country where you have data sovereignty. Okay? So this is not easy. So that the heart of your question, which is a bit complicated of a question, but I think what you're trying to get to is how easy is it for the US government to get at that data, and it would be work. It would be work, but this key of it is this encryption, that the person that, again, has that data is you, not us. And so we have an encrypted file, and you're not going to get much when you get it, if you could even get it, which will be hard. So you've got two hoops to get through. Basically, you got to get it, and even if you get it, not very usable. Sure. Hi.
Hi. Who are your competitors?
Who are our competitors? What makes us better than them? You know, I don't have enough time to really go through all the reasons that we're better. Our competitors are shifting, to be very frank with you. If you went back, you know, even 3 or 4 years ago, I would have said two of the biggest competitors. By the way, we have about 82 products. So I could give you a long list of competitors and keep you here a long time going through each one and why we're better. But on a big scale, if I tried to combine categories, I would have said at the infrastructure layer, a big competitor would have been IBM. I would have said at the apps layer, the applications layer, big competitor would have been SAP. That's changed a lot over the past couple of years. For example, if you were to look back at this cloud application portfolio, SAP has not decided to rewrite its applications for the cloud. So this is a big decision they made. They spent a lot of time working on a thing called, what is that thing they make? HANA, whatever it is. I forgot the name. I don't see as much of it. They don't talk about it as much as they used to a couple of years ago. But they decided to go after this thing as opposed to rewriting their apps, which I think is great. Let us handle that for you. We'll be glad to take care of it and so forth. And I say that sort of jokingly, but I'm also not joking. So they've made a big decision not to go at this part of the market we have. So that means our competitors have changed. So you'll see us competing more with Salesforce.com and some of the newer, more modern application companies. In the platform area, I wouldn't know if I'd call it competition, but another company with a platform as a service would be Microsoft. They would have Windows. They would have SQL Server, and they would have .NET as a development language. We'd have Java, Oracle, and Linux. We sort of like our hand, you know, relative to that environment, but they would be a competitor. So it's really changed a bit. And I think it's been sort of older tech companies that have crossed the chasm, so to speak, and some that haven't. And as we've crossed, our competitive set has changed as well. And so in the end, though, why are we better? You asked a very simple question. Sometimes requires a long answer, but I'll try to be brief. In apps, why we're better is that each of our apps is built to be the best app. Our design is to have the best HR app, to have the best ERP app. We're the only ones with ERP in the cloud. To have the best marketing apps, to have the best sales apps. And that if you just buy that app as an app, we win. But the extra benefit is the fact that you can also buy a suite of applications from us that are all best of breed. And it's going to become important because I do not believe companies are going to buy 300 separate cloud applications. I believe they're going to want to buy a big percentage of their apps from one provider, or perhaps two providers. So we're going to be different because we have a portfolio and because each of our apps is best of breed. The fact we can then complement it with platform, so I told you a competitor would be Microsoft. They also have very few apps, but we have the ability to have platform and apps. So we're different. And again, Oracle is a content company. We're going to be different because our intellectual property is the best. That's what we focus on. Thanks. Hi.
What is your vision of the future? Next 5 or 10 years,
So sort of the next big thing that comes? Yeah, I mean, so there's going to be a fair amount of time to just make what I said go. Right, so, you know, there's a lot to do in the next several years. I meant what I said earlier, though, that you get teased with a little bit as the consumer market today. I think where you see this head is the fact that user interfaces are going to change dramatically. I think if we look back, and I'm always a little gun-shy when I use this term vision because I always prove to be too quick and it takes longer to move. But I don't think it'll be that long before we think of this typing thing and keyboard thing as sort of almost like Stone Age sort of stuff. I mean, it's so silly today with all this incredible amount of data that we're sitting on a phone pecking to try to type something out when you could just as easily voice activate it, optically activate it. So I think the world of 5 years from now is some of what you begin to see in the consumer market, you'll see in the enterprise market, meaning that I can voice activate the query I just described to you. I can voice activate it, I can do it, and boom, I've got an answer in 2 or 3 seconds, even if I have to go intra-app or inter-application. That now the data sets are in such a way, and the ability to connect the data sets is so easy and so rapid that I can now get answers to questions any way I want them, anytime I want them. And that productivity gain is going to be huge. Right now, most apps, as I mentioned, this is why it's very dangerous when you buy these tens and tens of siloed apps. You're going to want to be thinking enterprise-wide. How do I now start getting answers to questions that go across the organization, just not vertically by process? And then how do I get our customers and/or our employees the ability to get access to it through multiple user capabilities? And these changes are going to be dramatic. I mean, I think you're going to see huge leaps. I mean, the fact that consumers today, the fact that I can get music content or what it may be, and I can get it down to my phone relatively, I mean, these are just the beginnings of what you're going to be able to see. And if I painted a vision for you over what's going to happen in the next decade, what could happen in the next decade, maybe it'll take 15 years. But you're going to now start seeing this ubiquitous access to information that employees and customers are going to be able to have that's going to be something like we've never seen before. And we're close. We're close. I'm done? I felt, okay. I was just getting fired up, right? I mean, it's a...
Thank you.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
For a couple of years, I used to talk to Oracle as a software company who's selling me assets. I have a lot of them on stock on my shelf today. How do I smartly move to your software, to a service model, without having to write off all my assets and just losing all the money I invested in your software?
It's funny. I'm going to give you a positive. I sort of felt like it had a little bit of a negative bent to it. But I would say on a positive sense that all of the on-premise stuff that you have today can work together interoperably with all of the cloud stuff. So for example, let's pretend, I don't know your environment, but let's pretend you had an HR application and it was PeopleSoft. And you'd spent money on it, and for whatever reason you said, listen, I got your vision and all this stuff, but right now I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. I got other places I want to spend money. You could get a recruiting application out of the cloud. And you could have that recruiting application work in concert with an on-premise PeopleSoft system and a SaaS recruiting application. You could take a talent management application out of the cloud and have it work in concert with your PeopleSoft system. You could have an on-premise Siebel customer loyalty system and get access to our marketing automation solutions out of the cloud and have them work together. So one of the neat things about this is you don't have to, change everything to get access. It's modular. It can work as you choose, and you can mix and match. So you don't have to go all at one time. You can do it at your pace in a way that makes sense for you. So it's one of the really cool aspects of this architecture. Yeah. Any thing else for me?
I have a question there.
Oh, sure. If I knew where you were, I'd be glad to look at you.
Just on your right side.
I'm on my right side. Aha.
Yes.
There you are. Yes. Hi.
Hi. When you talked about the competition earlier,
Yes.
you didn't mention open source initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to know if you don't think it is a competition, or how do you see the
It's a
interaction?
very interesting
between,
question.
yeah.
I think that, I mentioned a bit earlier, and I passed through it pretty quickly. There's one very attractive part of the cloud. By the way, I go on a lot of sales calls, and I have customers who will ask me, hey, in that computer, what microprocessor's in there? What's the nanometer size? Because we have a standard microprocessor that we put in our data centers. And then, same 5 minutes later, you'll be talking about something in the cloud. and the customer's not concerned with the nanometer size of the microprocessor of the computer in the cloud. And the question is why? And it's because it's easy. It's somebody else is managing all those assets. And one of the real attractive parts of the cloud is the fact that you transfer work from your IT budget to the industry's R&D budget. When you buy one of these applications, you don't have a server. You didn't glue the operating system to the server. You didn't glue the database to the operating system. You didn't put the app on top of the database. In the do-it-yourself environment, you sort of do. And the industry, if you were from where I'm from in Silicon Valley, Highway 101 that goes from San Francisco to San Jose, which is basically the valley, is littered with product companies who have made a living selling you a product and actually selling you slews of products and convincing the industry, you put them together. You make them work. By the way, if you have a problem, we might or might not help you, depending on your problem. And I think what you see with the cloud is a bit of a revolution against that, which is, let's go back to the CEO. Let's pretend I was not a tech CEO. I was a CEO of a company outside the tech industry. And you tell me my technology organization is gluing, they have great expertise at provisioning servers. I don't care. It doesn't help me. So I think open source, to your point, has a role, but you have to ask yourself, to what end? Is it a procurement strategy? That I'm trying to get something cheap, and then I'm going to go keep it up? Because remember the thing about open source. Once I do it and build something, who owns it? You. Who's going to keep it up? You. Who's got to keep the staff to keep things running? You. Who's the support engine for it? You. So it just becomes a decision of how you want to spend your dollars. And I think one of the reasons this cloud thing is so popular isn't because it's cheap or anything else. It's not just the innovation, but it's all of it. It's easy, and you now have an innovation. That's the reason I went through the feature sets for you. Imagine you get all those features and you get the work done by somebody else, and I think that's why it's so, I think I've seen a statistic now that 75% of the companies will have at least some portion of their workload in the cloud by the end of this year. And there's a reason for that. And it's a lot of what we just described. All right, am I done? Okay, please, I'll take this last one before. Am I bothering you? No, I can tell.
Hello?
I don't get a lot of support here. I'm past my time, so, no, please, go ahead. No, please, I'll take a question. I can hear you even if that doesn't work. Yeah, it's okay.
I think that the young generation may be keen at buying more performance-based than applications such as CPA or CPC, and how would you do your positioning?
So being the younger generation will want more performance-based solutions. I don't know that I want to make sure I understand so I answer it correctly.
Rather buying performance like cost per action or cost per click.
They buy solutions. Yeah. Well, listen, I think that's part of the same question, right? Which is, in the end, as companies, we only care about solving a problem, right? I mean, I want as complete a solution as I possibly can. And I don't really think this plumbing underneath the solution is what's the differentiator. It's going to be what the final solution will be. And I do think, you mentioned the younger generation. I don't think it's just the younger generation. Let me give you an example about our industry as a whole. Our industry really came about transferring the work from our industry to customers. We convinced customers that this was normal, that you should hire tens and hundreds of people to put all this stuff together. And I don't know how you guys do it here. You may do it differently in France than I do it in the US. In the US, I do not buy a muffler. I don't buy a piston. I don't buy a seat and get all that stuff, put it in my driveway, and have Accenture put it together. I buy a car. I buy it finished because I want a solution. I don't want to do the work. And it's funny, if you go by industry, our industry is a young industry. It's a very young industry, and it has time, it's needed time to mature. And I think what you see in cloud is one of the next maturations of the industry. We've gone from an industry that was a mainframe industry to a client-server industry, to an internet industry, to now a cloud industry. And the promise of this cloud is, again, I mean this, the economic shift of power away from customers doing their own work to getting somebody else to do it right and innovating for them is how I see the industry evolving. I'm not sure whether that's an age of the customer issue, as you were pointing out, or a maturation of the industry issue. Maybe it's a bit of both, but it's clearly our industry's had to mature to take, in my opinion, more ownership to the solution, to deliver the customer a tested, warranted product. And I think that's what this is the early innings of this stuff. Trust me. You give this stuff 5, 6, 7, 10 years, our industry is going to mature at a pace you haven't seen ever before because of the tools and platforms we have now. All right, I think they're going to pull me off now for sure. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Okay, thank you for your time.